Good evening and welcome to the fifth of the six classes in our series on the six Bardos. Tonight we'll be getting into the fifth Bardo, the Bardo of Dharmata. But before we start and jump into the Bardo of Dharmata, I'm curious whether some of you might have actually put into practice the teachings from last week in the Bardo of Dreaming and played with some of those instructions on lucid dreaming. And if you did, if you have any questions about that, that would be a good way to start this next series or the next session. Or if you have any comments about what you experienced and would like to share those, I'd love to hear those also. Anybody?
Yeah, Eric, I just tried it on like for fun, kind of. Like something pops up and I go, man, where did that come from? So it took some awareness to do that, and quite frankly, I maybe only did it like 3 or 4 times. And
That is lucid dreaming?
No, it wasn't
illusory body.
What's that?
Or illusory body, telling yourself this is a dream during the waking state.
Did I use those words? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so which did you do 3 or 4 times?
I was awake.
Uh-huh.
And I think you were telling us to practice while we're awake.
Oh, right.
Like,
yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
And name it something.
Exactly.
And where did that come from? My deep psyche or what? And
Yeah.
things mostly were familiar, but why did it? Why is this popping up now?
Uh-huh.
And so that was just a start for me. And so it's kind of, because I make a big deal out of all this stuff, and it doesn't really work. So I didn't do the Pinocchio thing. I thought but that didn't work for me. But I was just playing with it. So
Good.
it's good.
Good.
I was told about lucid dreaming by a friend of mine a few years ago, and I have found myself in dreams saying, "This is only a dream. Remember that." And it doesn't always happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen fairly often. And I found the dreams that are kind of weird have gotten way better when I realize that they are a dream, and I am asleep while I do that, as far as I know.
Yeah. Great. And so the key for lucid dreaming, so it sounds like those were spontaneous lucid dreams that you've been having. And the real key that we talked about last week is priming yourself before you fall asleep, while you're in bed, and going through the whole process of lying on your right side in the sleeping lion position, and then with a strong motivation saying, I really want to remember my dreams, and then with generating bodhicitta as the motivation for doing that. And so anyway, I should just mention that in your handout, one of the reasons that it's so long this week is that I included the instructions for that 4-petal lotus visualization that you can use to prime lucid dreaming. And so give that a try again this week. Don't give up on it because if you did try it and it didn't work, because it takes some time and some persistence and a powerful motivation to really get the results. But I think anybody who is a lucid dreamer or has experienced it will tell you that it's such a different state of consciousness that it has some power to open up some new transformative vistas. And I hope that by the end of the class tonight, you'll see that one of its greatest applications could be during this period after death. And if that happens, when you get to the Bardo of Dharmata, you'll be glad that you had practiced lucid dreaming. I guarantee it. All right. Thank you very much for your comments. The whole, I guess you could say, trajectory of what we have been talking about through these the first of the Bardos, because we've been talking about 6 Bardos rather than what is sometimes thought of as 3 Bardos, with 3 of them being during the Bardo of Life. And then now, and I remember I taught these out of order. I taught, first of all, an introduction to the Bardo of Life. Then in the second class, we went into the Bardo of Dreaming. Oh, I'm sorry, the Bardo of Dying. And the reason I did that was so that when we went back then to the third class, which was the Bardo of Meditation, which obviously occurs during this lifetime, that you would be motivated and really have a panoramic context for understanding why it's important to do those particular practices where you're trying to fathom the nature of the mind and its luminous, empty nature, and how that prepares you then for recognizing the clear light of death when that occurs. Sometimes that's included as the first step in the Bardo of Dharmata in most Dzogchen teachings, but other traditions usually regard that as the end of the Bardo of Dying, the last stage of the Bardo of Dying. So if you are well prepared in your shamatha practice and vipassana practice to recognize the mother clear light when it occurs, then you become enlightened right there in the Dharmakaya. And so the whole journey through the Bardos ends as soon as you have that recognition of the nature of mind and the nature of what you're experiencing as being, in the first case, of the mother clear light, of the empty nature of the Dharmakaya. And then with the practices of dream yoga, that is really preparing you for what comes next. So when you go through the experience of dying, which is a dissolution process, and the whole trajectory of that dissolution process is that your the coarse elements of the body, and then the coarse mind is dissolving. And with the dissolution of the, so first of all, the coarse elements of the body dissolve into consciousness, then consciousness dissolves into space, and then finally space dissolves into luminosity. And when that happens, then you don't recognize the nature of mind when the mother clear light shows herself to you, and your child clear light doesn't recognize her as the mother, then you are propelled into the next Bardo, which is the Bardo of Dharmata. And I think it's very helpful to remember this term, so of what the mother clear light or the clear light of death is, some of the other synonymous terms for these. And it is the ground luminosity is a very common and precise term for it. And also the luminosity of no appearance, because it is pure awareness with no object. And so this is the Dharmakaya. And if you don't recognize this, then you are propelled into the next Bardo, which is still a Bardo of ultimate reality, but it is now the Bardo, or I should say, the luminosity of appearance. So the first one was the luminosity of no appearance. Now the Bardo of Dharmata is the Bardo of appearance. And you will see exactly what kind of appearances arise out of this still ultimate experience, because you, at this point, are still experiencing the ultimate nature of mind itself, and you aren't being propelled along by your karma, which happens in the next Bardo. And when you, so if you don't recognize the Bardo, the clear light of death, the whole experience would pass basically as a state of unconsciousness. And if you do recognize and are a advanced practitioner or have very powerful karmic seeds, I guess, even though that they're not really operating at this point, but then you could end up as, well, probably not as, but approaching what Gyaltro Rinpoche displayed with his nearly month resting in the clear light of death, which is called Tukdam. But for most of us, this is going to pass in an instant, just a flash, and we won't even recognize what's happening. And it will just be a moment of unconsciousness. And then we will wake up into an entirely new world. And this is the Bardo of Dharmata, which in Sanskrit means the intrinsic nature of everything, or the essence of things as they are. So again, you can see this is an ultimate state. And this is the naked, unconditioned truth of the nature of reality. But now there are appearances rather than just being pure awareness. And sometimes this is described as being like the night time turning into day. And remember that with the end of the dissolution of the mind or consciousness into space, you ended up in the black near attainment, which is a state of for most of us, it will be a state of unconsciousness, but it is possible with one of the practices that we discussed in Dream Yoga, the luminosity yoga, to actually get an experience of substrate consciousness and substrate in this life. And that is exactly the experience that you will then find in the black near attainment. And the whole goal is to actually remain conscious during that period which is normally unconscious like a faint, or unconscious like a general anesthetic, or unconscious like deep dreamless sleep that you experience every night. And so if you can begin to bring awareness to these normally unconscious states, then for your nighttime dream yoga, you have an opportunity to move from awareness in the substrate to a dreaming state, and for that all to be occurring with awareness. So there would never be, when you start dreaming, you would automatically start lucid dreaming. And eventually, it's possible this can happen after you achieve shamatha, which is still quite a rare experience, that you would be aware 24 hours a day then, and mindful 24 hours a day, without ever losing awareness during these periods of deep dreamless sleep. So obviously, when you are able to do that as a meditative experience in this life, then you are really well prepared to, during the whole dissolution process in the Bardo of death and dying, to remain aware through the black near attainment. And so this metaphor of night turning into day, it's the black near attainment is often described as darkness, or the sky as cloaked by darkness, a moonless night, and no stars. And then the Bardo of, or I should say the luminous emptiness of the mother clear light, when you experience that, that is often described as like the pre-dawn sky. So it's becoming, awareness now is becoming bright, but still it's just a brightening of the horizon, and the sun hasn't really risen yet. And now the Bardo of Dharmata is described as the sun coming over the horizon. And now appearances are going to be manifesting, and then you will have a chance to actually work with the emptiness and luminosity of appearances rather than just resting in awareness itself with no appearances. The Bardo of Dharmata has sometimes been likened in contemporary terms as being a black hole and the Big Bang all in one. And so it is spontaneous presence, a densely packed dynamic energy out of which all phenomena of samsara and nirvana arise as like a Big Bang. And they are also the black hole which all appearances return to and disappear into when they self-release spontaneously. So I'd like you to recall now our very first session in which we talked about what I was giving you some arguments that you can debate with yourself why consciousness continues after death and the primacy of the mind. And you might remember that I discussed then this emerging alternative that has been around for several thousand years, actually, but is emerging now as very a scientific hypothesis, and that is a description of the relationship of mind and body and how these two interact and how what is mind and is it actually a product of the brain, an epiphenomenon of the brain, as the physicalist theories state, which is the orthodoxy of most of science right now? Or is it what is actually William James called it a transmission model, which has this relationship between the body or the mind and the brain being one, rather not that the brain produces the mind, but that the brain actually limits the mind, that it is filtering or transmitting or funneling a very expansive consciousness into a manageable amount of data that is solely or the whole evolution, which evolution has designed to be adaptive. And so all of the experience of this consciousness that is actually produced by the brain is something, only a fragment of what consciousness is out there before the brain filters it and reduces it. And so this model is compatible with both the leading edge of physics and also with the basic tenets of most of the wisdom traditions and spiritual traditions. And that is basically, or essentially, that the mind is primary in nature. And as you recall then, I just want to repeat this because it's very important. What Henry P. Stapp, one of the leading quantum theorists, wrote in Scientific American after some recent experiments actually proved quantum entanglement, which is one of the most mind-bending theories of the last 100 years of quantum physics. And this is what Stapp wrote in Scientific American. Taken together, these experiments indicate that the everyday world we perceive does not exist until observed, which in turn suggests a primary role for mind in nature. It is thus high time the scientific community at large, not only those involved in foundations of quantum mechanics, face up to the counterintuitive implications of QM's most controversial predictions. All matter, not only that in living brains, is the outer appearance of inner experience. Different configurations of matter reflecting different patterns or modes of mental activity. And so this is a statement from the leading edge of quantum mechanics. And one of the questions that is often asked of quantum mechanics then is if it's true that appearances or the world, phenomena, don't exist until observed, what is the nature of the reality before it's observed, which is in quantum mechanics called the superposition state. So what is the nature of that? And the answer typically given since Heisenberg has been something like, let us not attribute existence to that which is unknowable in principle, meaning that if you're not aware of it, how can you even posit that it exists? And the cognitive psychologist Donald Hoffman really elaborates this idea on why can't reality be known in his book, The Case Against Reality, Why Evolution Hid the Truth from Our Eyes. And this is really, I think, illustrates the power of what we're going to be discussing tonight, because there's an answer to this question. And Hoffman wrote in his book, The Case Against Reality, our perceptions of snakes and apples, and even of space and time, do not reveal objective reality. How can our senses be useful? How can they keep us alive if they don't tell us the truth about objective reality? Suppose you're writing an email and the icon for its file is blue, rectangular, and in the center of your desktop. A common everyday experience for all of us now, right? Does this mean that the file itself is blue, rectangular, and in the center of your computer? Of course not. The color of the icon is not the color of the file. Files have no color. The shape and position of the icon are not the true shape and position of the file. In fact, the language of shape, position, and color cannot describe computer files. The purpose of the desktop interface is not to show you the truth of the computer, where truth in this metaphor refers to its circuits, voltage, and layers of software. Rather, the purpose of an interface is to hide the truth and to show simple graphics that help you perform useful tasks such as crafting emails and editing photos. If you had to toggle voltages to craft an email, your friends would never hear from you. That is what evolution has done. It has endowed us with senses that hide the truth and display the simple icons we need to survive long enough to raise offspring. Space, as you perceive it when you look around, is just your desktop, a 3D desktop. Apples, snakes, and other physical objects are simply icons in your 3D desktop. These icons are useful in part because they hide the complex truth about objective reality. If our senses hide reality behind an interface, then what is reality? I don't know, he concludes. Do philosophers and scientists not know the nature of reality before observation because it really is, in principle, unknowable? Or is it actually something that can be known and directly experienced? Padmasambhava is telling us in this text, which we're simplifying the title as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and the Dzogchen Tantras also especially tell us that beyond the appearance of icons, reality is indeed knowable and can be directly experienced. And it is especially easy or natural and inevitable that it will make an appearance during the Bardo of Dharmata. And so this is the goal of our practice, to actually be aware and conscious of this experience. When this great answer is revealed, what is the nature of reality before an observation? And what is the nature of reality beyond the icons of the transmission model that the brain has left us with, just the information that we need to survive? So now, because dualistic consciousness has dissolved during the process of dying, and the mind is now free from its reliance upon the senses and the limiting that involves, what emerges is the pure knowing of the luminous and empty nature of everything, but now not as the Dharmakaya, but as the Sambhogakaya, meaning that it now expresses itself as forms. All the ordinary features of our familiar environment have now melted into an all-pervasive landscape of light. This is brilliantly clear and radiant, transparent and multicolored, unlimited by any kind of dimension or direction, shimmering and constantly in motion. So this is the experience that we wake up to when we wake up out of the black near attainment, and we would only move on to this Bardo if we did not recognize the Dharmakaya as the mother clear light. So if we miss that opportunity to become enlightened, this is the opportunity that awaits us then in this next Bardo, the Bardo of Dharmata. So some of these descriptions I just have to read to you because they are so precise that it's really extraordinary to think that there is a body of knowledge that is scientific in every sense of the word, meaning that it is hypotheses that have been tested and verified by independent testers around a large part of the globe anyway, and then results compared and then best practices arrived at, etc. So it's really a scientific knowing of what lies beyond the icons. So this is the description. Everything that appears to you is brilliant five-colored light, like a rainbow with spheres or droplets of brilliant five-colored light scattered throughout. And then within these droplets, you see the forms of various deities. All of these appearances are the display of the five Buddha families, which are not inherently existing deities out there independent of you, but they are inherent aspects of your own Buddha nature. But they still deceptively manifest as external appearances. So this is really crucial, that they appear as being external, and you still have the challenge at this stage in the Bardo of Dharmata that you need to recognize them as not being external, but these are actually projections of your own mind. The lights that you see in the Bardo of Dharmata are so bright and powerful that you may well be frightened and feel threatened by them. And at the same time as these powerful, intimidating lights, intimidating in their intensity, lights of wisdom appear, at the same time you will see other lights that are dimmer, more comfortable, and much more appealing. So the standard reaction is going to be, of an unprepared sentient being anyway, is to flee the intensity of the bright light and to be drawn to the muted light. The muted light, however, is the familiar display of your 5 mental afflictions or kleshas, these being attachment, hostility, ignorance, jealousy, and pride. So these are, because they are so familiar and are really one of the most powerful motivations of our behavior in this life, they are so comforting and appealing when these appear, again, in this very amorphous way, but still as a form, meaning that they appear as these rays of light, a 5-colored light, and then eventually, well, in the beginning, in the first phase anyway, it's just these like carpets of light and the rays that are being shown from them. So the advice of Padmasambhava at this crucial juncture when you are feeling intimidated or frightened by the intensity of the bright lights and being attracted to the dim, comforting, appealing lights that are associated with mental afflictions, is to recognize exactly what's going on. And at this crucial juncture, do not be frightened by the brilliant lights of wisdom, and don't be seduced by the muted and comforting light of mental afflictions. So you are actually being offered a choice here of which path you are going to take for your subsequent experiences and rebirth, and whether there will be a rebirth or not, actually. And so the advice of Padmasambhava at this point is to face this terrifying intensity and recognize it as radiant display of pristine awareness, your own ultimate nature. So this is exactly the skill that you have developed in lucid dreaming, to recognize that all these appearances, no matter how terrifying the nightmare might be in your dream, you recognize it is just a creation of your own mind. It is just a dream image. And so this is exactly what we need to recognize at this stage in the Bardo of Dharmata. And if you don't recognize what's going on in that first display of the 5-colored lights, the lights then begin to coalesce into spheres of light. These are called tigle in Tibetan. And within the very intense, transparent, shimmering spheres of light, then you will find the mandalas of the peaceful and wrathful deities. And these then appear as enormous spherical concentrations of light that seem to occupy the whole of space. It's quite amazing, the descriptions, how vivid and descriptive and precise they are. And again, the brilliant light that these tigles emanate is so blinding and dazzling, and there are sounds like the roaring of 1,000 thunderclaps, and the rays of light are like lasers, piercing everything. So these are the very famous 42 peaceful and 58 wrathful deities that you will be experiencing within these tigles then. The mandalas of these 42 peaceful and the 58 wrathful deities will appear within these blinding spheres of light. The deities, both the peaceful and the wrathful, are symbols of the intrinsic nature of your mind, manifesting in the form of what are called the 5 Buddha families. It's very important to recognize that these are not independent inherently existing deities out there, but that these are archetypes or very powerful expressions of your own primordial consciousness. And although that the wisdom of your primordial consciousness is unitary and one, there are described 5 different facets of this wisdom that help us to understand and relate to the wisdom in general of Buddha nature. And when our minds are under the influence of dualistic confusion, meaning that we believe that there is a separation between observer and phenomena that are being observed, we perceive the natural energy that is being expressed by these 5 Buddha families as the 5 poisons or kleshas: attachment, hostility, ignorance, jealousy, and pride. So it's really critical. Lama Allen has really emphasized repeatedly that the key ingredient for a mental affliction is reification, meaning that you attribute existence and a concrete existence to something which is just merely an abstraction. So here, when we mistake and are confused by this duality, even though what we are experiencing is the profound, pure Buddha nature, or the expression of 5 Buddha families, these 5 facets, then they are going to be experienced by you as these 5 poisons. And on one of the pages, probably the last page in your packet, there is a chart here that describes the 5 facets of primordial consciousness. And this is really a helpful way of understanding what the true nature of these 5 Buddhas really is, and understand them as expressions of the 5 wisdoms. And so, for example, as examples of the way that delusion of duality creates the kleshas, if its true nature is recognized, free from grasping, the wisdom of discernment, which knows reality as it is perceived as the full range of phenomena. So attachment, that is. So if you're having an experience of attachment, for instance, which is a very common moment-to-moment experience of most of ours, it is because you are reifying something, an object out there, as being separate from you. And because it is separate from me and not a product of my own mind or a projection of my mind, it, of course, has the power to make me happy. And because it is something external, I cling to it and grasp to it and want to own it and subdue it and make it mine because my happiness depends on it. But if you actually recognize its true nature, free of grasping, you recognize it as the wisdom of discernment, which knows reality as it is and perceives the full range of phenomena. And it continues then, this list continues with all of the other mental afflictions and their corresponding wisdom. Hostility and anger, when truly recognized, arise as mirror-like wisdom, which is free of contamination and reflects appearances of all manner of objects. And when ignorance and delusion are recognized, they arise as the wisdom of the absolute space of phenomena, which is the pure ground of emptiness. And pride, when recognized, is realized as the wisdom of equality, which knows the equal purity of samsara and nirvana. And jealousy, when it is recognized, is free from partiality and grasping, and arises as the all-accomplishing wisdom with which all activities are perfectly and spontaneously accomplished. And so these 5 mental afflictions arise as the direct result of not recognizing their true nature. And when truly recognized, they are purified and liberated. In the Bardo of Dharmata, the mandalas of the 42 peaceful deities will appear first. At the center of each of these mandalas that appear in these radiant tigles are a male and female Buddha in union, and each family is accompanied by a particular retinue and is associated with a specific color, element, direction, and enlightened quality. And you see these also on this chart here, the directions and enlightened qualities and the elements of each Buddha family. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is often really thought of and used as a very long script, hundreds of pages, the script is being read to people that are dying and have died, and are being read by either a trusted lama or somebody that is a dharma friend of the person who has died, and that they would have natural trust in. And so there are pages and pages of instructions that are read to a person as they go through the whole process of the dissolution and through the bardos then of Dharmata and the bardo of becoming, which we get to next week. So it's said that the peaceful deities appear first for a week, and then the wrathful deities appear for another week after that. And the whole process of the bardos takes 49 days before rebirth occurs, if it does occur. And then the whole text is organized based on this breakdown in this timetable of days. So during the first 5 days, then someone would give these instructions, reading them, to kind of invoking the presence of the bardo being the person who has died, either with a picture or some other talisman, perhaps. But they would call the person by name and then read instructions to them about what they would be experiencing on that particular day if it all went according to that timeline. But we'll see later that it won't necessarily go according to that timeline. And so this is just an example of the instructions that you would find for one of the deities on the third day of the appearance of the peaceful deities. So the counselor or the guru calls the person by name and then says, "O son or daughter of an enlightened family, listen without distraction. On the third day, a yellow light will arise, which is the pure essence of the element earth. Simultaneously, from the yellow southern Buddha field, known as the Glorious, the Buddha Padmasambhava will appear before you, his body yellow in color and holding a wish-fulfilling jewel in his hand. He presides upon a throne borne up by horses and is embraced by the supreme female consort, Mamaki. Around him are the 2 male bodhisattvas, Akashagarbha and Samantabhadra, and the 2 female bodhisattvas, Mala and Dupa. so that 6 Buddha bodies appear from within the expanse of rainbow light. The inherent purity of the skandha of feeling, which is the equalizing wisdom, a yellow light, dazzling and adorned with tea glaze of light, large and small, radiant and clear, and unbearable to the eyes, will stream towards you from the heart of Padmasambhava and his consort, and pierce your heart so that your eyes cannot stand to gaze at it. At exactly the same time, together with the light of wisdom, a dull blue light representing the human realm will come towards you and pierce your heart. Then, driven by pride, you will flee in terror from the intensity of the yellow light, but delight in the dim blue light of the human realm, and so become attached to it. At this moment, do not be afraid of the piercing yellow light in all its dazzling radiance, but recognize it as wisdom. Let your Rigpa rest in it, relaxed and easy, in a state free of any activity, and have confidence in it. Have devotion and longing towards it. If you recognize it as the natural radiance of your own Rigpa, even though you do not have devotion and have not said the necessary prayer of inspiration, all the Buddha bodies and rays of light will merge inseparably with you, and you will attain Buddhahood. That's just an example of a description of one deity and the advice that if you were reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead to somebody who has died, this goes on for day after day after day like that, with a description totaling 42 of the peaceful deities. And so it's all very detailed, and if I were to read all that, page after page after page to you, I don't think it would prepare you very well, because you would forget it, obviously, and be totally confused and wonder, well, I'm a Christian anyway, and, I don't think I'm going to see these things. I can't even imagine them right now, so what's the point? So anyway, this is in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This goes on for all of the 42 peaceful deities and the 58 wrathful deities, just in this Bardo. And I have had long transmissions on the Tibetan Book of the Dead from Tibetan lamas where they did exactly that, just read the descriptions, and exactly as I just read that to you, but it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And frankly, I don't think that the descriptions themselves are, except for the broad outlines of what's going on here, is going to be all that helpful to you, or that if you aren't prepared with understanding what's really going on here, that hearing these instructions from somebody who is just reading them to you after you are in the Bardo would probably make all that much difference to you. So if you don't attain liberation by way of the appearances of the peaceful deities, then the appearances of the deities will change. And it's not that the deities themselves change, but that your perception of them will change. And so the initial appearances of the peaceful deities, even though they are overwhelming in their intensity, and you still may feel frightened by this intensity, it still is an appearance of beautiful rainbow light. But now the appearance changes, and the peaceful, beautiful rainbow light, even though it's overwhelmingly intense, now becomes fire. And the peaceful deities now become herukas, which mean blood drinkers. And the purpose of this transformation from peaceful to wrathful, we can probably understand from our experience with peaceful and wrathful in this life. Sometimes a mother or a father or a friend is peaceful and supportive and encouraging and loving, and that is exactly what a person needs. And many people thrive in that kind of atmosphere. And for some people, just constant praise, or for instance, may just make them complacent and put you to sleep. So if that's the case, and you have these appearances of the peaceful deities have not awakened you, then the wrathful deities show up to shock you with their really terrifying manifestation. And so when you experience these terrifying appearances, you will be overcome by intense fear. The mind may feel powerless, faint, and dizzy. But even against these odds, if there is a little recognition, the text says, liberation can be attained because the mind is single-pointedly concentrated by the fear. So there's something for everybody, whatever you need here. And you will, so here's an example, just as I read a typical example of the peaceful deities. Here's an example of the wrathful deities from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. O child of noble family, he who is called glorious great Buddha Heruka will emerge from within your own brain and appear before you actually and clearly. His body is wine-colored, with 3 heads, 6 arms, and 4 legs spread wide apart. The right face is white, the left one red, and the center one wine-colored. His body blazes like a mass of light. His 9 eyes gaze into yours with a wrathful expression. His eyebrows are like flashes of lightning. His teeth gleam like copper. He laughs aloud with shouts of "Allah la" and "Ha ha," and sends out loud whistling noises of "shoo." His red gold hair flies upward blazing. His heads are crowned with dried skulls and the sun and moon. His body is garlanded with black serpents and fresh skulls. His hands hold a wheel in the first hand on the right, an axe in the middle, and a sword in the last, a bell in the first on the left, a plowshare in the middle, and a skull cup in the last. He sends out palatal sounds and roaring sounds like thunder. Flames of wisdom shoot out from between the blazing Vajra hairs on his body. He stands on a throne supported by Garudas with 1 pair of legs bent and the other stretched out. Do not be afraid of him. Do not be terrified. Do not be bewildered. Recognize him as the form of your own mind. Recognition and liberation are simultaneous. So that is the pith advice. And remember the prospective memory. When I see something weird in a dream, I will prospectively remember that this is weird. How weird? Might I be dreaming? And then you do a state check. So now the prospective memory that you develop, and you can do this by getting a tattoo or just repeating it over and over to yourself, that when I am terrified, I will recognize these are all appearances of my own mind. So this is the key to liberation in this Bardo. whether you're terrified by the peaceful deities or terrified by the wrathful deities, recognize that all 100 of these appearances are appearances of your own mind and are just aspects of your own consciousness. Now it's important to say that after having heard these descriptions, and especially after you have heard them for weeks on end, and with this kind of detail, you may get the impression that these are self-existent external deities that you are, of course, going to encounter exactly as they are described here. But that is really not the case. And if you take them as that, you obviously are not going to take them as appearances of your own mind. And you will not be liberated if you take them as being external, truly existent deities. So everyone is going to experience these, the Bardos, in a different way that is dependent on your own habituation and your own karma, your habits of perception during this life. So for typically it's said in the text that the Bardo of Dharmata, in the Bardo of Dharmata, you will experience the peaceful deities in the first week, and then in the second week, the wrathful deities. And then if you are not liberated in this Bardo of Dharmata, then you move on to the next Bardo, the Bardo of Becoming, and then you spend the rest of what eventually would be 49 days before rebirth in the Bardo of Becoming, with a variety of, can be terrifying experiences again. But these now are all really produced by your karma. So they'll be really tailored to you. But it's important to recognize that every aspect of this experience in the Bardos is going to be your individual experience. So even the 49 days that are described are really figurative, because the days are really samadhi days. And remember, a samadhi day is the length of time that you are able to maintain an undistracted, balanced mind of perfect clarity and stability in the condition of meditation. So if you have developed powerful shamatha, then your samadhi perhaps, maybe it's good for a half hour or something, maybe an hour. Could be, if you really attained shamatha, it's said for at least 24 hours you can be in this single-pointed state. So that is one samadhi day. Obviously, if your practice of shamatha is not all that great, and your single-pointed awareness may last only moments, then your experience of the Bardo is also going to last only moments. So it could be that the whole experience then just flashes by in really a state of that you fall into unconsciousness throughout the Bardo. And it's said that it's possible that 12 days may actually be experienced as 12 brief moments, the time that elapses between the moment you realize, I am falling down the stairs, and the instant you hit the floor. So it will be over before you know that it is even apparent or that it's there. But the images, regardless of how long they last, are going to be extremely vivid and powerful. And I think you can get an idea of that if you are lucid dreaming, or people who have had near-death experiences and return with descriptions of their experience for instance, hovering about the operating table. And they will report years later that those memories are still some of the most vivid and powerful of their entire life, and that they don't fade. So this is an indication also of exactly how powerful and vivid these Bardo images are going to be, even though they may not last for very long. And just to repeat again and again, because it is repeated so many times in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the key is to recognize that these are simply the displays of the qualities of your own Buddha nature. They are in no way external appearances of an other. A frequent question is also naturally asked by Westerners. Will deities appear to me, a Westerner, and if so, do they have to appear in the form of the peaceful and wrathful deities as described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead? And it's important to recognize that the appearance is not dependent on any spiritual realization that you may have, but the recognition of them, of what's really happening with this appearance, that is dependent on your level of training and your level of awareness and awakening. In the Buddhist view, the essence of mind is the same for all sentient beings. So the underlying structures are universal, but the surface structures are particular to each individual. And so because the journey through the Bardos is a journey of the mind, the surface structures are going to produce appearances that are uniquely yours. And so why would a Christian or a Muslim experience the same deities, for instance, in the Bardo of Dharmata, that a Christian, or as the same appearances for a Christian and Muslim as a Buddhist? They won't. So for a Christian, it could be that you will be experiencing the divine presence of Jesus or Mother Mary or a patron saint, or someone else who is very powerful for you as a spiritual figure. And generally, the whole purpose of the enlightened manifestations of Buddhas is to help and support and benefit you. And so naturally, they are going to appear in whatever form is going to benefit and support you most readily. But regardless of the form the appearances in this Bardo take, the general pattern of the journey through the Bardos is universal. So this is the hypothesis of Tibetan Buddhists in this, and Padmasambhava in this text, that everybody will, in the dissolution process and the journey through the Bardos, have an opportunity to recognize what is going on, these appearances as being just projections of the mind. But the actual appearances themselves are going to be yours. What is the best way then, now that we have an idea of what lies ahead here, now we can look back again at the Bardo of life and ask ourselves, what is the best way to prepare for this experience of these appearances of form that are ultimate expressions of Sambhogakaya? And how can we prepare ourselves to recognize them as projections of our own mind and not be terrified by these nightmare appearances? The primary method for taking the Bardo of Dharmata onto the path is the practice of recognizing and resting in the nature of mind. This, of course, was exactly what we talked about at great length with the Bardo of meditation, that the whole point was to familiarize yourself with this pure awareness with no appearances, this best facsimile of the Dharmakaya in your meditation practice of Vipassana, and recognize the luminous empty nature of mind, and then also the luminous nature in Vipassana practice, the luminous empty nature of appearances. And so the first, recognizing the emptiness of the mind without appearances, just recognizing the empty nature of the mind, is the best, most powerful way to familiarize yourself and to take advantage of what's going to appear to you when that mother clear light shows herself to you. And then in the practices for the Bardo of dreaming, lucid dreaming or / lucid dreaming, dream yoga, and then the illusory body and luminous awareness, these practices really prepare us for this Bardo, the Bardo of Dharmata, and recognizing all appearances as just the pure radiance of the primordial consciousness itself and Buddha nature. So we have just enough time to do a full meditation now, Gataka, and let's practice a meditation that will prepare us to take these appearances to the mind as the path and recognize appearances as luminous, empty appearances. So find a comfortable position, take a moment to stretch, and find a position that you can keep for 24 minutes. Padmasambhava emphasizes in the shamatha section of Natural Liberation that it is important to begin every meditation session with settling the body, speech, and mind in their natural states. So it's best to keep your eyes open and let your unfocused gaze rest vacantly in front of you in space. And as you maintain this vivid awareness with no objects that you are focusing on, let your awareness descend into the body, from the head where you have been thinking about everything that you have heard. Descend now into the body and settle the body in its natural state, which is relaxed, still, and vigilant. This vigilance is supported by your erect posture. And settle the breath in its natural state by giving up all control of the breath. Let it find its own rhythm. And settling the speech in its natural state also entails allowing the conversation in your mind to settle into effortless silence. And you can promote this silence by releasing thoughts, images, memories, all distracting appearances. Release them on the exhalation into space. And settle the mind in its natural state by resting in the effortless freshness of this present moment. Give up the obsession with the past and infatuation with the future, and rest in the fresh, unlimited potential of now. And now, based on this foundation of the natural states of your body, speech, and mind, we'll begin our practice with something very simple. Devote your full attention now to the appearance of sound. Let your total experience of sound be what your sense of hearing is providing. In the herd, let there be only the herd. How long can you stay with only the sense of sound before the conceptual mind begins to elaborate it? Release any elaborations on the breath and rest with only this primary sense of sound. One of the first things you may notice, if you are attentive, is that even with this basic sound, you have a feeling of either liking it or not liking it. The pure sensory experience of sound occurs in the present. Thoughts about the sound take you away from the present. Does identifying and giving a name to the sound change the initial experience of the sound? We first awaken to the dream. We then awaken from the dream. Can you see with your experience of something as simple as sound how you dream an illusory thing into existence by giving it qualities that you like or don't like? Don't try to suppress the thing. Just recognize it for what it is, a dream image. Let it be and let it go. Now, let's stop meditating and not do anything. Simply rest your awareness in the present moment. Wide open, free of distraction to appearances, free of grasping to the mind. Let this resting awareness be aware simply of itself, vividly aware of its own resplendent luminosity. There is a simple flow of knowing, a simple presence in the freshness of now. Notice the difference between the stillness of this awareness and the movement of the mind when appearances arise. Rather than preferring this stillness, rest in the simultaneous stillness and movement of a lucid dream. If you notice that you have lost awareness of the stillness, you are non-lucidly wandering with appearances. Our habit from breath meditation is probably to regard the distracting thought as a fault. And when we discover it, we wake up. The distracting thought ends, as if we were waking from a dream. But in this practice, the appearance is not the problem. The lack of lucidity is the problem. When you notice that your mind has wandered, try to add just a touch of lucidity to the distracting appearance without chasing it away. Simply observe, knowing the appearance to be mind. Let the motion be, without chasing it away, without waking from the dream. It's just a light touch of lucidity. Just as in lucid dreaming, strike a fine balance between stability that allows the dream of appearances to arise and to continue, and the clarity that knows it for what it is, the simple radiance of empty awareness, a dream. Just as in lucid dreaming, don't become so excited that you have discovered the wandering, that the appearance vanishes. that you wake up. Just see the mental appearances for what they are. Pure appearances. The radiance of empty primordial consciousness. Whatever thoughts or images come to mind, simply observe their nature. Without thinking about them, without appraising them, without identifying with them, without perpetuating them, without terminating them. Know you are dreaming, but without waking from the dream. Refine your awareness so that the moment an appearance arises, you recognize it from your still point, and you simultaneously see its nature. And with that confidence, simply rest in luminous awareness. What could possibly frighten you? And as you know these dream appearances to be luminous emptiness, let that recognition reveal the empty, luminous nature of the mind from which they arise. Dreamer and dreamed, ocean and its waves, the sun and its rays, inseparable unity. wake up. Are there any questions about what we covered tonight or that you experienced in the meditation, or any comments? Well, thank you all for coming, and I hope that I'll see you for the concluding episode before rebirth. This is one you don't want to miss. Next week, 7 o'clock, same place, Wednesday. Have a good week.